We're gonna start our caramel. 1½ cups of honey. So this is clover honey. I would say clover honey is probably the most popular honey that you'd find. I'm gonna take ½ cup of cream. We're just gonna combine it, the cream and the honey, and then put on the heat and let this get to 240 degrees. And then when that happens, we're gonna add a little bit of butter and some bourbon, a little bit of vanilla, and then we're gonna add some salt. And the salt is gonna give it that salted honey caramel flavor that's so popular these days. And it's gonna go terrifically with our pistachio and chocolate chip pancakes. Speaking of which, let's make some pancakes. We're gonna start with 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. Two 2¼ teaspoons of baking powder. A little bit of salt. And that is the dry ingredients. And then we're gonna combine the wet ingredients. So we have a couple of eggs. One and a half cups of buttermilk. Some vanilla extract. 2 tablespoons of honey. 3 tablespoons of butter. It's melted, so it will incorporate into the wet ingredients. Then some orange zest. And then we're gonna chop up some pistachios and some semi-sweet chocolate. Pistachios are definitely one of my favorite nuts, and I love all things pistachio. I love pistachio cakes, I love pistachio gelato, pistachio ice cream, pistachio milkshakes. Now, when you're working with pistachio nuts, they're really dense, they're very firm. I think it's a good idea to kind of chop them up into smaller pieces, especially for, something like pancakes. Okay, that's the pistachios. And then we have some semi-sweet chocolate that we're gonna just chop up. And if you want to, you could use, semi-sweet chocolate chips as well. But we're gonna chop up our own chocolate. So we have shards of chocolate running through the pancakes. Not too bitter, not too sweet. They call it semi-sweet. Okay. I'm gonna put the wet into the dry, just until it forms a batter, and then we'll fold in the pistachios and the chocolate chips, or the chocolate shards. Smell that orange zest. When the pancakes hit the griddle or the pan, you're gonna smell the orange immediately. All right, chocolate and pistachios. So I think these are a little bit thick. I'm just gonna add a splash of buttermilk. I love buttermilk because it has like a little tang to it, but also promotes a tender pancake. Okay, check on our caramel. Now at 240 degrees, we're gonna add a little bit of vanilla, a tablespoon of bourbon, a couple of tablespoons of butter, and some salt. After it gets to 240, then you can just add the ingredients and kind of swirl it around, and we'll have our caramel. That looks great. So good. First thing I taste is the chocolate and the orange together. And the crunchiness of the pistachios is in there, but the pistachio flavor isn't overwhelming, and that's good. And then you get a little bit of that sweet and savory thing happening with the caramel sauce. Creamed wheat with peanut butter and jelly. So we're gonna add some of these black grapes into a roasting pan with just a tiny bit of water. Cover them up, and we're gonna roast some grapes. 375 degrees for about 30 minutes. While that's cooking, we're gonna make our creamed wheat. 1½ cups of water, and then a cup of milk. And then a tablespoon of peanut butter. I'm always tempted to put a little bit more in here because I just love it so much. For this recipe, I'm using creamy peanut butter because I want this mixture to be nice and creamy, but then I'm gonna chop up some peanuts later and bring in the crunch later. So I don't want you to think that I'm abandoning the crunchy peanut butter. This is just the right way to do this recipe. All right, so let's whisk this up. We have water, we have milk, and we have peanut butter. We're gonna let this kind of melt. Let the liquid come to a simmer, and I'm chopping up my peanuts You know, this creamed wheat only takes about 6 minutes, so I'm gonna get all my ingredients ready to go. And I'm going to add a little bit of this grape jelly to my grapes, kind of help with the texture. All right, so we're gonna add the jelly. One thing the jelly does is it adds flavor, but also the pectin in the jelly will actually help thicken it up a little bit. All right, I'm gonna take the black grapes, tin foil off, let them roast a little bit longer. About another 10 minutes or so. All right. And I'm gonna take a half a cup of this creamed wheat. So now we're gonna slowly add our creamed wheat into our simmering peanut butter mixture. Kind of like as if you were making polenta. You have your hot liquid and you slowly add the cornmeal or the polenta into the hot liquid so that it thickens up. Basically, we're doing the same thing. You know, if you didn't want to use the creamed wheat, you could actually use cornmeal. Just let it cook for a lot longer. And then you'd have more like a cornmeal mush, as they call it, or a brunch-style polenta. And this should only take about 4 or 5 minutes to cook and thicken up. Creamed wheat is done. You can smell that peanut butter. It smells great. Let's plate this up. Get our roasted grapes. Those look good. Let's give those a taste. Nice. Okay. So we have our peanut butter flavored cream of wheat. Then we take our grapes, peanut butter and jelly, so to speak, and then our crushed peanuts. And then we're gonna add a little bit of the juices on top. There we go. It smells great. The key to this thing is flavor. You want it to taste good, but at the same time, have a lot of nutrition. Lots of protein in here with the peanut butter, but also it's gonna help you get you through your day. We're gonna get started by making date molasses. We're gonna take the pit out to make our molasses. For the French toast, make a slit in the date and then take the seed out. All right, I'm gonna put the dates with about 4 cups of water. So we're gonna let this cook. We're gonna let the dates get nice and soft, and then we'll strain them and we'll make, you know, we're gonna get a beautiful molasses out of this. Let's move on to our apples. For the French toast, we have some Gala apples here. Good to cook with also because they're very firm. So we're gonna start with our butter and sugar in the pan. 4 tablespoons, so that's half of a stick. Some sugar. Let the butter and the sugar caramelize a little bit. So on the apples, I want them to start getting some good sort of caramelization, especially on the edges. You want the apples to cook so they're nice and soft. I don't want crunchy apples on top of my French toast. Just don't want it. That looks so good. So we're gonna add some Middle Eastern spices. Cardamom has sort of like, it's almost like a lemony kind of flavor, but there's nothing that you can substitute for cardamom. I mean, it really has its own personality. Just gonna put a few of these seeds in there, and then a couple of sticks of cinnamon. It smells so good. I'm gonna also put one more thing on top of this French toast, because these apples aren't enough. In the Middle East, they refer to their sort of thick yogurt as labna, and a lot of times they'll mix it with like fresh mint and fresh herbs. Also fantastic. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of heavy cream in here, just because I just wanna thin it out a tiny bit, not so much. The thing I love about the yogurt is the tanginess. This is a fresh vanilla bean, where you get all the seeds. And so you cut it in half, and you cut it down the middle, lengthwise, to expose it. And then you take the back of your knife and just force the beans out of the pod onto your knife, okay? That's what it looks like. I'm gonna do both sides. But then watch this. So we take all the insides from the vanilla, put it on your whisk, and then you start to stir it. You get those beautiful vanilla bean seeds running through your yogurt. There we go. So you want to cook the dates for about 20 minutes to a half an hour, just so they're nice and soft. And then you can really kind of crush them. And then molasses is about to happen. Let's go to our apples. Oh, see, that's what I'm talking about. Look at those apples. Are you kidding me? Beautiful. Nice caramelization on the outside. Gorgeous. All right, so now we can add the apple cider. Let's say a half a cup. And just a squeeze of lemon, kind of wakes it up. Just a tiny bit of salt. Now we're gonna take our dates that have been cooking. I'm gonna strain them out. So I'm just gonna whisk up our eggs and our egg yolk. A little bit of vanilla bean extract. I never measure the vanilla bean, because I always put more than the recipe says, because I just like the flavor of it so much. Some half and half, a couple of cups, and then some cardamom, ground cardamom. So the main key to a good French toast is making sure that you soak the bread long enough. You want to soak it for maybe 30 or 45 seconds on both sides. We're going to start with some canola oil and some butter. Now, don't crowd the pan. I'm going to put a little bit of the yogurt right in the middle. Look at this. It's ridiculous. We're going to make some brown butter, bourbon, maple baked donuts. In this case, we're actually going to bake the donuts. So these are actually a little bit easier. I'm starting by browning some butter. This is a whole stick of butter. I'm gonna need half of the stick for the batter, or for the dough, and then I'm gonna use the other half of the stick for the glaze. We're gonna start with 2 cups of all-purpose flour. 1½ teaspoons of baking powder. A half a teaspoon of baking soda. A little bit of salt, and then some ground nutmeg. And we're just gonna take a fine hand grater and just grate the nutmeg right into the dry ingredients. A couple of eggs. 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And some vanilla extract. Three-quarters of a cup of buttermilk. Buttermilk is going to give us some tender donuts. A little bit of tanginess in there as well. You know, buttermilk is one of my favorite ingredients. I don't know if you saw the buttermilk brunch show. I'm gonna use half of the brown butter for the batter. And I'm gonna use the other half of the brown butter for the glaze. And the brown butter is gonna give it that nice nutty sort of undertone. And we're just gonna mix this until it just kind of comes together. And now we're gonna put this in a pastry bag. We're gonna bake some donuts. So we're gonna cut the tip of this off. Make some donuts. I'm gonna fill this up about 3/4 of the way. We're gonna rise a little bit. With the pastry bag, we can control where the batter goes a little more efficiently. So we're gonna get the first pan in the oven. It's only about 8 minutes, 375 degrees, and we're gonna have some donuts, folks. You can eat the donuts plain, they have a lot of flavor. But why have a plain donut when you can have a brown butter, bourbon, maple syrup glazed donut? That's really the question, don't you think? So we have some brown butter, a couple tablespoons of the bourbon. Let the alcohol from the bourbon sort of melt away. We're gonna add a little bit of maple syrup, about a half a cup. A little confectioner's sugar now, some powdered sugar. And I'm actually gonna sift it so that it doesn't clump up in the glaze. So you just want to stir this vigorously so you get all the lumps out. All right, there we go. I like nuts on my donuts. I like that crunch. So we're just gonna chop some toasted pecans. The donuts are incredibly tender, and you get a little crustiness from the bottom of the pan that it's baked in. And then you got that glaze. You taste the maple syrup right away. It's enhanced by the bourbon. Even the nuttiness from the brown butter and, of course, the pecans works out really nicely. Now we're gonna move on to some pancakes that are gonna be inspired by your favorite cinnamon bun. So now I'm gonna start by making the cinnamon sugar swirl. We started with some brown butter, and I'm gonna add about a half a cup of dark brown sugar. And then a couple of teaspoons of cinnamon. Whisk this together. This is what we're gonna actually pipe into our pancakes when we put them in the pan. I'm gonna add about a quarter cup of water. It's gonna get a little thick, a little syrupy. And the cinnamon is cooking. It smells great here. I want to keep stirring it because I don't want the cinnamon to clump up, or the sugar. And a couple of tablespoons of cream. And you really have to let this cool to use it. Smells good, though. Okay, so we have a little bit of warm maple syrup. I'm gonna pour it right over some softened cream cheese. This is gonna create our cream cheese glaze or frosting, basically what you get on top of a cinnamon bun. And this you wanna whisk pretty vigorously so it gets nice and smooth. Okay, let's make some pancakes. Let's start with 1½ cups of all-purpose flour. You know, I always have my recipes written down for batters and doughs, but you don't have to write them down, because all you need to do is go to foodnetwork.com/brunch, and the recipes are right there for you. 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and a ½ teaspoon of baking soda, 3 tablespoons of sugar, a good pinch of salt. Mix these together, and then we're gonna get to our wet ingredients. A couple of eggs. One and a half cups of buttermilk. You could use regular milk, but I love the flavor of buttermilk, and also I think buttermilk makes for a more tender pancake. A little bit of vanilla extract. 3 tablespoons of melted butter. The melted butter is gonna help make the pancakes a little golden brown on the outside. Now we're just going to fold the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients just until it forms a batter. Don't want to overmix them. Pancakes make me very happy. Such a good thing. Who doesn't like pancakes? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my brown sugar and cinnamon mixture and put it into a pastry bag so that when I put my pancakes into the pan, I can actually swirl it right into the middle of the pancake. So you can see it's kind of thickened up as it's cooled. Lots of delicious goodness in here. Cinnamon, brown butter, brown sugar, and a little cream. Okay. Let's start making some pancakes. I'm gonna get some butter going in my pan. So we're gonna put some pancake batter right into the pan. And I'm gonna spread a little bit. Those cook for a second. I'm gonna take our cinnamon and brown sugar swirl and just swirl it right into the middle. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna let the pancakes cook on one side, get them nice and crusty, and then we'll flip them over really quickly on the swirl side down, just to kind of cook the top of it. But for the most part, you're gonna cook them on one side, say like 80% on one side, flip them over for another 20% of the time, and then we'll be done. I slowed down the heat a little bit so that they actually cook through without getting too brown on the bottom side. At the same time, we don't want it to get too crusty here. Here we go, ready? Count to 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They're beautiful. Look how beautiful that is. Nicely caramelized, and it's actually part of the pancake, and it looks like a cinnamon bun, except it's a pancake. Who knew? Let's give some of these a taste. Really beautiful. I'm gonna chop some pecans, some toasted pecans. And we're gonna take our maple and cream cheese glaze or sauce. And then a few of the chopped pecans. And let's get at it. You know, it really tastes like one of those glazed cinnamon buns with the cream cheese and the maple glaze on top of the bun itself. We have the cinnamon and the brown sugar running through that swirl. Such a cool idea, and it's really beautiful too, and easy to do.